So, the market is officially set as I predicted with Imai's, deadline to sign being tomorrow. I knew that either today or sometime on January 2nd before the 4 p.m. deadline, we would find out what Tatsuya Imai would be doing. Would he be going back to Japan or what MLB team would he be pitching for? Well, we are one day into the new year, and the first big domino for MLB starting pitching market has dropped as Tatsuya Imai has signed a 3 year, $63 million deal with the Houston Astros, which makes sense because they need pitching. I mean, right now, their best pitcher before Imai was there was Hunter Brown. Everybody else was just kind of like, pick and choose. I mean, I know there's Blanco there too, but the question is, can he stay healthy now? Um, so 3 years, 63 mil. I think that is a lot less than what we thought Amai was going to get. But remember what I said when Munataki got that 2 year, $34 million deal. I said, I have a feeling Amai's not going to get as much as he thought or as much as everybody thought he was going to get. And that was true in that sense. So now with him gone, the market is set for Framber Valdez and Ranger Suarez and potentially even Zac Gallen, as those are now the top three starting pitchers that are on the market. And of course, the Orioles have at least been linked to two of them. I don't necessarily know if they've been linked to Zac Gallen that much, but I feel like he could be the fallback for the Orioles if Valdez or Suarez doesn't sign with them. But they've met with Framber Valdez. He's familiar with Mike Elias because of, Mike Elias scouting him back when he was a scout for the Astros and drafting him. And we've met with Ranger Suarez. So we've already got those two, at some point, meeting with us and all that kind of stuff. Whereas, like I said, Zac Gallen might just be the fallback. I don't know how into him the Orioles are, but with the other two, we know that the Orioles are interested. And now the question looms, who do the Orioles pick now? Because I know they've made some moves in the starting pitching, market with trading for Shane Baz and recently re-signing Zach Eflin on a one-year deal. But a lot of people, including myself, said I don't really think that that's means the Orioles are done with that. Obviously, you need pitching depth and starting pitching. I mean, look at the Dodgers last year. They won the World Series. And if you look it up, they used 17 different starting pitchers last year. 17. And they won the World Series. There was only one guy for them that pitched over 170 innings last year, and that was Yamamoto. So the Dodgers just had pitching depth at the wazoo last year. And despite all the injuries and inconsistency, were able to win another World Series. It was practically the same in 2024 too. And it's kind of, their thing. I mean, Tyler Glass now was injury prone when they got him, so they knew what they were getting themselves into with that. And Clayton Kershaw was a little bit older and he's retired now, but still, it's going to be interesting to see this with the Orioles because I still do believe that one of those three guys will be an Oriole. Now, the cheaper option might be Zac Gallen, who could get something probably similar to Tatsuya Imai. But like I said, I don't necessarily know what the Orioles' interest in him is. We know that with Valdez and Suarez, they are interested. And does Imai's deal set the market for that's what the main basis for the Valdez and Suarez deals are going to be, or is there's going to be a little bit larger where you might actually have to throw 100 million out there for 5 or 6 years or so? That's going to be the big question, I think, at this point. And I think that the Orioles might be more willing to do it with Suarez than Valdez, since Suarez is 2 years younger. But at the same point in time, Valdez is the healthier one. He pitches consistently every single year. Not saying Suarez doesn't pitch consistently, but he has definitely problems with staying healthy over the season. But man, is he efficient? They're not guys that are going to strike you out, flamethrower, whatever. They're just so reliable in what they do that really either one would be good for the Orioles. Like I said, with Valdez, you can put him as the opening day starter right away. With Ranger Suarez, I don't know. I still think he would be like your number two. I don't think he would be the ace, but that's what the Orioles are looking for is a number one or number two right now. And they don't necessarily have that. I mean, I guess if they were to go in with the rotation they had now, it's either going to be Rogers or Bradish that would pitch opening day. But again, I don't see that happening. I see them getting one of those two and making a move. And if they don't get those two, like I said, the one fallback guy I think the Orioles could fall back on is Zac Gallen, who I know had a down year last year, but has been pretty consistent in his career. He's the same age as Suarez at 30 years old. And I think you can give him like a 3 year, $70 million contract, or maybe 4 years, 80 million, if you really want to go that far with it. So I think obviously he would be the cheaper option, but it seems like the Orioles are really all in on Valdez or Suarez. And who knows? The Orioles do have some competition. I know the Mets are still in on Framber Valdez, but the big question with them is, you know, are they willing to give the years that Valdez is going to want? Because with these players that are 30 and over, the Mets aren't really willing to give out anything longer than a 3 year deal. So we'll see what lands there. And with Suarez, I don't really see much competition with him. I mean, people say the Giants, but they've gotten Adrian Hauser and Tyler Mahle the past like week or so. So I don't know. I don't really think the Giants are going to be humongous spenders when it comes to that. I think really they set their rotation around Logan Webb and the health of Robbie Ray, and bringing in, Hauser and Mahle as, middle rotation guys that they know they can rely on when healthy. So I don't know if the Giants are going to be as big of players as they're making them out to be, because to me, it's not that I think the Orioles offseason is like almost done with a couple of moves. I feel like after they get this starting pitcher that they want, I feel like their offseason is going to slow down a lot more because they've been busy. But, they got two bats where you basically add 74 home runs to the lineup with Ward and Alonso. And I still think they might make moves for like a bullpen arm after they get the starting pitcher, but bringing Kittredge back helped, bringing in Helsley helped. And, you still have some, in the organization options that are due for either a bounce back or still pretty good in themselves. So really it's just the rotation that we're looking at and saying, if the Orioles get one of those top three guys, then that could be what gets them over the hump here, because their lineup on paper looks like one of the best. I mean, yeah, you're banking on a bounce back from like Rushman, which may or may not happen. And I do think Gunnar Henderson's going to bounce back. And they say, well, Jackson Holiday needs to show up. And he did get better last year. And I understand that. So that's another one that you're really going to have to rely on doing, something. And Jordan Westberg has to stay healthy. But on paper, this is one of the best lineups in the game. And with the rotation, I think the rotation now is better than it was last year. But I think that the Orioles don't want to make the same mistake, especially since heading into January last year, they pretty much let all the other big name starting pitchers go somewhere else, and we were left with the scraps. Well, this year you're kind of lucky that the starting pitching market has been a little slow, as I think, again, King, Cease, and Imai have been like the top three guys that have signed, and yet you still got three or four options out there that are, plenty good. And we know the Orioles are in on two of those guys with Valdez and Suarez. So again, I just think that the Orioles know this time around that they have to make a move, because yeah, the rotation's decent now, but they need it to be good. And with Valdez, you're going to get a guy that's going to eat innings. He's going to pitch to an ERA under 4. He's going to pitch well. One of the things I like about him is he doesn't give up home runs. He's a lefty, pitches to contact, and it's a lot of weak contact. And I think the most home runs he's allowed in this season, I want to say, is like 15 or 16, which when you're pitching at Camden Yards, that definitely could help. He's not one of those ground ball pitchers where he's just getting hit all over the place, going to have a high ERA, but he doesn't give up a lot of home runs. No, he's going to be an efficient pitcher at Camden Yards when it comes to the ground balls. Suarez is a little different. He's also a lefty, but he also doesn't allow too many base runners in itself for a lot of the home runs he gives up to really matter enough. So yeah, whereas Gallen's a little bit different. Gallen does give up the home runs. He strikes out a little bit more batters than I think Suarez and Valdez will. It's not that they don't strike out a lot of guys. I think Valdez basically averages one strikeout per inning when you look at his innings pitched and total strikeouts, and Suarez can do it, but Suarez barely tops out at like 94 miles an hour. He's more efficient with his like off speed stuff. So yeah, it's going to be intriguing to see what the Orioles do. It really is, because I was expecting Amaya more to come down to the wire tomorrow, but literally it was 2 hours ago. So around 1 o'clock, we got the announcement that he was signing that 3 year deal with the Astros, which I kind of knew he wasn't going to the Orioles. I know people wanted him, and I know people said he'd be a good fit, But I think when you look at the Orioles, when they want a top of the rotation starter, they're looking for a guy that's already been acclimated and has already been there and done that. So I kind of knew Imai would be I think the one I said where if Valdez and Suarez aren't on the board, the Orioles might go after Imai just because I feel like 3 years, 63 million. If we really wanted him for that, we would have threw that on the table. But it's also kind of weird that it took him this long to sign. I mean, none of the Japanese guys or international signings are really flying off the page. It took Munetaka Murakami a little while. I know what's his name, Sungmin Song signed with the Padres for 4 years. He's actually got the longest contract of any of these guys that signed. Cody Ponce signed a 3-year deal with the Blue Jays, which that one was just weird. He was playing with the NPB last year. So they've signed, but I just think it's been a slower market than a lot of people have expected because Okamoto's still out there. Now, a lot of people think he could be going to Pittsburgh, but also his deadline to sign is tomorrow, and I haven't really heard anything about it. So who knows if he'll be playing in the MLB this year, too? What's it? Kazuma Akamoto, I think is his name. Yeah, right here. I'm trying to see if I see any rumors. No, it just still says Pirates Insider kills Katsuma Akamoto dream, so it doesn't even look like the Pirates are going in on him. Um, and I don't really see anything else. So Akamoto could be on his way back to Japan in this sense, but we'll see. We'll see. Again, he has till I think it's 4 p.m. tomorrow to sign, but at least the one that I cared about the most was Imai because he's a starting pitcher. That's what the Orioles need, and I knew once he signed that there would be more of an idea of what Valdez and Suarez would be offered depending on Imai's deal. Because if Imai got over $100 million deal, I feel like Suarez and Valdez would be like, okay, well, we're more equipped in the MLB because we've been here for a while and we've been pretty consistent. So we won about 5 or 6 years, 150, 160 million. Now I think you can get them at like 4 years, 110, 120 million. And I think they'd be okay with that just because, or not Akamoto, Amai didn't make as much as we originally predicted. But thing we saw it with the relief pitchers. I said in my video when Devin Williams or not Devin Williams, Edwin Diaz signed with the Dodgers, the relief pitchers started, going pretty quickly off the market since he kind of said it. So now I think with Amai signed, we're going to see more starting pitchers get signed, or at least the top end pitchers, because other than the three I mentioned with Suarez, Valdez, and Gallen, Nick Martinez and Chris Bassett are two veterans out there that I think are going to get looks from other teams and whatnot. So there's options out there. Plus, we have the trade market that's still open. That's another thing. If the Orioles don't want to or can't sign one of the free agent targets that they want, Freddie Peralta's still out there, Mackenzie Gore, even though they'd be 1 year rentals, those guys still put in your rotation and would make it a whole lot better. There's any of the, pitchers from Minnesota, like the top, I know Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez are like the main ones, although I don't think they want to trade them, but anything's possible at this point. It's just going to be very interesting to see what happens now. And if the Orioles stay true to their word about wanting to get a top of the line guy. And usually in past off seasons, I would have my doubts. But with the way this offseason has gone and how busy the Orioles have been and them already giving Pete Alonso a big contract, I'm willing to sit here and go, okay, there is a possibility. I can believe this, front office right now because we've actually done stuff. We've done things that we've been uncomfortable with doing in the off season with the big contracts and, trading some low level prospects away who aren't, even close to major league ready to get better talent. We've been busy. We've been doing what we said we were going to do. And if it was last year and the, front office said this and the owner said this, I would have my doubts because of, what they did last year. Just kind of putting band-aids on things like signing 42-year-old Charlie Morton to a 1 year deal and signing Tomoyuki Sugano to a 35-year-old out of Japan to a 1 year deal, which I liked that deal. And he wasn't terrible. He doesn't strike out guys. He doesn't walk a lot of guys. He gave up a lot of homers. That was really about it with his time with the Orioles. But I said, the Orioles have to kind of back off these old guys when it comes to starters and start really digging deep into the guys that are, under like 33 years old, like we have with Suarez, Gallen, and Valdez, and start to sign them to multi-year contracts. Because trust me, Kyle Gibson was good in 2023, but he was already 35 years old, and it was a one-year deal, so he probably wasn't coming back. And then, there was the Charlie Morton deal and Sugano deal. They're 35 and 42 respectively. And it's just like, okay, I get it. But, these guys are on the verge of retirement, especially Morton, who I believe just did retire at off season's end. And I mean, of course, there was Corbin Burns, but that was a rental trade from the beginning. We knew that. And that was one thing I think last off season that kind of really made me question if we were ever going to get back to being that aggressive team in the offseason, because apparently we never even offered Corbin Burns a contract to come back, which is ridiculous. The man had a 2.94 ERA and was a Cy Young candidate. So I don't know, but obviously he went to the Diamondbacks, pitched well before having Tommy John surgery. So there is going to be concerns of how he'll come back from that. But with the way this front office has worked and this owner too. I mean, Dave Rubenstein, I will say this about him because I watched the Pete Alonso press conference. Could be a little annoying at times. I get it. He's like a 70-plus-year-old man. He said, it is what it is. But you can tell what he's saying. He means it. Like when he's saying, I'm 70 plus years old. I don't have time to sit around and just wait for a championship anymore. And that, Mike is free to talk to whatever free agents he wants to talk to, and we'll add whoever we feel is going to make this team better. And now that he's thrown the checkbook out there, especially to sign Pete Alonso, I'm starting to believe Dave Rubenstein or Stein, whatever it is. I've heard Stein, but I think it's Dave Rubenstein a little bit more. I'm starting to believe him. And he feels like he has that passion. And it's probably because he's a Baltimore native. The Angeloses were not. And you can tell they just stopped giving a crap toward the end of the time. And that's kind of why we were like, please just sell the team then to someone who actually does care. And thankfully we did. And I think with Mike Elias, the last couple of years for him in the offseason have been a little weird because before the 2024 season is when we, had the Angeloses sell the team, and Dave Rubenstein and I can't remember the other guy's name. The other, he's like not necessarily the majority owner, but he is, still a good. I think it's Dave Arrighetti, I think is his name. When they bought the team, they didn't necessarily have full control over the Angeloses yet. Last offseason they did, but I feel like there was kind of like a thing of like, okay, well, we have these guys. We don't necessarily need to go out and spend much. So let's just kind of get these guys here on one-year deals and just see where it goes from here. And when that backfired, I think Rubenstein realized, okay, we cannot do that again because injuries are a thing. Baseball's a long season. And yes, we have the guys that we need to potentially win a championship, but we also need depth. And there's, other options out there that could be better than current players that we have. So now I think for the first time, we're seeing Dave Rubenstein and Mike Elias on the same page when it comes to the off season and what the plan is really. And obviously the plan for them since has been to win now, but I think they have it down as to, okay, well, we can do this in negotiations. And I don't ever think the Orioles, outside of maybe if they like sign a Gunnar Henderson to an extension, I don't think they're going to go over like the $250 million threshold for a free agent, even though that hasn't happened yet. I do believe Cease's 210 is the most that a free agent has gotten this year, which, like I said, when that happened, as much as I would have liked Dylan Cease, it was a major overpay on the Blue Jays' part, especially for 7 years. That was interesting to me. I thought maybe it'd be like 4 or 5 years for 150 to 170 million. I was not thinking that Dylan Cease would be the one to get over $200 million. But he did, and that's when people thought, oh, the starting pitching market is set, and it never kind of set itself. It kind of slowed it down, to be honest. But I think with Michael King and Tatsuya Imai kind of getting in the same range. I think King was 3 for 75 and Amai was 3 for 63, so not necessarily close to the same range, but in that range in general. I think this is where the GMs and owners are going to be like, okay, these these two have kind of this similar, pay when it comes to, contract. So let's see what we can offer these, other free agent guys that maybe want what Dylan Cease has, but they're starting to realize that Dylan Cease got that deal because the Blue Jays got desperate and threw money at him and vastly overpaid. They're still going to be cautious about it, but I think at this point in time, I still think that that 100 million might be in the cards for Valdez and Suarez, wherever they end up on new teams, and one of them, if they end up on the Orioles, that's cool too. And then, like I said, outside of that, with the off season, once the Orioles decide to make a move here, again, I think a lot of things are going to slow down. I mean, I get it. There's still like a full month left before spring training starts. I think it's like February 20th or something like that. Um, but I mean, they right out of the get-go, they were just making moves, and then they, made trades and whatnot. They've been one of the most active teams, and so far they've been ranked as one of the teams to have the best offseason thus far. Everybody just keeps saying they're just missing getting that top of the line guy and whatnot. So I think that the Orioles will do that within the next couple of days. I don't think we'll have to wait too long. Now that Imai is signed, I feel like, now we could be seeing something, if not tomorrow, by the third or fourth or fifth for the Orioles, or at least Valdez or Suarez might sign somewhere else first. And then that could give the Orioles an idea of like, okay, well, then this guy's our guy and we'll go out and get him. But, it's just, it's been a slow off season for just in general for the MLB. Obviously, we know there's probably a pending lockout heading into next off season, but for the Orioles, they've been working hard. They've been doing their thing. They've actually been spending, and they've actually been willing to get rid of prospects that aren't going to help the team right now to get players that will help the team right now. And like I said, their next big move will probably be one of these free agent starters. And then I believe maybe, like I said, you go after like some bullpen arms that are still out there, because there's still a good bit out there despite a lot of them being signed. And then maybe try to look for a bench guy. I know the Orioles have said that, that they're okay with some of the guys that they have on the bench, whether Basayo, if he doesn't play, which he's not going to play every day, he's going to play a lot, but not every day. He's basically going to be your number two catcher. The question is, though, do you bring a third catcher into the fray because you're going to have Basayo DH and play first base here and there? And I feel like with Mountcastle or Mayo, one of them is going to get traded, who I don't know. Obviously, there's got to be something there because, I mean, if you're planning on playing Basayo at first and even Adley at first, and you have Pete Alonso there, one of those two has to go. And considering Kobe Mayo can also play third base, I mean, Mountcastle might be the odd man out here. And of course, people are saying who's going to be like the utility guy for the Orioles, the guy that can play multiple positions. And I really think the Orioles already have him on their roster. I think people forget how well Jeremiah Jackson played when he got called up last year. And I believe he played second base, third base, and I believe the corner outfield spots. So I think he's earned it. I mean, he hit like 276, 5 home runs, 21 RBIs when he played. So it's not like he was just doing good playing everywhere. He was actually hitting the ball well too. So I think the Orioles definitely do have their utility man. And then maybe depending on who you have starting right field, whether that be Beavers or O'Neill, one of them is going to start, on the bench and all this stuff. And, that's going to be interesting. But the Orioles are probably at this point like, all right, let's get the starting pitcher and then let's focus on, bullpen. Because I know at one point, I don't know where we're at now, but we were interested in Jojo Romero from the St. Louis Cardinals. And since the Cardinals are basically willing to trade any of their veterans at this point. I mean, what they got rid of Gray and they just got rid of Wilson Contreras. I don't know why they haven't gotten rid of Nolan Arenado yet, but that could be coming, or maybe his value's just gone down because the past couple of years he's definitely not played up to his standards and is probably starting the decline in his career. But Jojo Romero would give us another solid, seventh, eighth inning guy, I think, who can strike out a good bit of batters. He's a lefty as well. So I think he could help, but the question is, what would the Orioles have to give up to get JoJo Romero, who's a reliever at this point in time? But again, I don't think that's their main focus. Their main focus is starting pitcher, and with Amai off the board now, it's seeming more and more likely that it's going to be Valdez or Suarez for the Orioles. And if it's not, then I would assume their fallback is going to be Zach Gallen or maybe like a Chris Bassett. I don't know. That's probably just, the Orioles like at the bottom of their list. Like, okay, if we don't get Suarez or Valdez, there's these guys. But I already know that they're like, okay, we're talking to Framber, we're talking to Ranger. Who can we offer the best deal and who's going to take the deal and who's not? It's going to be that. And again, we will see in the next couple of days where that goes overall. But yeah, outside of that, that's really what I wanted to come on here and talk about. Just a lot of interesting things. I mean, I've just been so surprised too. Like, I didn't think the White Sox were going to get one of the Japanese guys. They got uh, Munetaka Murakami. The Yankees, I don't know what they're doing. They've been so quiet. It's been weird. I mean, they brought back some of their guys on 1-year deals that they had last year, but it's like, I don't know where they stand with Cody Bellinger. I don't know where they stand with Kyle Tucker. I don't really know what their plan is. And of course, the Dodgers. I mean, outside of Edwin Diaz and bringing back Miguel Rojas, they've kind of been, oddly quiet in the sense, considering, you just lost Clayton Kershaw to retirement, and that you have a lot of injury prone pitchers. You would figure they would want to get somebody out there. And I know they've been linked to Scooble, but at the same point in time, again, I don't know where that's going to head. But the teams that are usually active are not, and the teams that usually aren't active, like the Orioles and the Pirates, they have been, and they've kind of been surprising a lot of people. Um, so it's been a weird off season in general, but I also think with a lot of these players wanting big contracts and not getting them because a lot of these teams aren't budging, I feel like that is also helping out the smaller market teams, because now a lot of these guys are going to take lesser deals than what they wanted, and it could help them, sign these players easier. Because one thing I forgot to mention about Amai's 3-year deal with the Astros, he has an opt out after every single season. So there's a possibility that he could have a really good year this year and decide, okay, well, I can make more money and opt out of the contract and become an MLB free agent again at 28 or at 29. If he decides after 2 years, like, okay, I've done well and I think I'm more than what I'm owed now, so I'll hit the free agency market. So he could be a free agent before he turns 30 because he has an opt out in all 3 years of his deal with the Astros. So that could be interesting, because I think Munetaka Murakami, was his a fully 2-year guaranteed deal? I can't remember if there was an opt out after this year either, but he signed a short term deal and he'll be a free agent again in a couple of years. And if he does very well with the White Sox, I mean, he could get a bigger deal by the time he hits free agency again. If not, well, hey, at least you tried. But yeah, like I said, it's just been a crazy, crazy MLB off season. And yeah, thankfully the Orioles have been busy. Now we wait the decision for what they're going to do about the top of the rotation starter with Valdez or Suarez. But that's basically my thoughts. Really like to hear what you guys have to say about it at this point. Who would you rather have, Valdez, Suarez, or in this case, Zach Gallen, if we really had to go with a fallback to, sign a top of the line starting pitcher that isn't one of those top two options? And I plan on probably seeing you guys again on Monday in live format, because depending on what happens Sunday night, the Ravens could be in the playoffs. They might not be. It's a win and in for them. So who knows? And considering the way the season started for the Ravens to be in this situation, it's kind of impressive if we're being honest. So yeah, even whether the Ravens win or lose, I'm just going to recap the season and how it went, and how, despite the 1-5 start, I'm still uber proud of the team and the way they were able to overcome so much adversity this year to either win the division and get to the playoffs or, fall short, but somehow finish 8 and 9 when it probably should have been a whole lot worse. But yeah, until then, that's it for me. Stay safe out there. Hope y'all are having a happy new year, and I will catch you all in the next one.